Hire, Acquire, and Inspire Law Firm Leadership with Ross Albers, episode 224. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I'm super excited about today's interview because there are different ways that you can grow a law firm. And sometimes we don't think about the other alternative ways to scale that law firm and to grow it. And one of the things that really bothers me about law firm owners when they start out, and this is not like all of them, so I'm not accusing anybody of doing this, but this is a very common finding in the industry. And this is the example I like to use. When a doctor starts a practice and is going to see patients, the doctor doesn't try to open his doors and invite people to come in to an empty office to examine them and to take care of them. Instead, the doctor realizes, hey, I need to buy an examining table. I need to buy some equipment to check people's ears and eyes and nose and throat. I need to have the ability to take their blood pressure and maybe draw blood and all that. So the doctor has to invest some capital into the office just to be able to open up and start. And things are so easy these days that a law firm owner can start a law practice with literally no expense, maybe $500 for throw up a website and create some business cards, or buy a domain and get an email address, and then you're done, right? And the trap that we fall into is thinking that we don't need to invest in our business. And that's a big mistake, because we need to invest in marketing. We need to invest in people. We need to do those things before we're ready. So we have to prepare, and we have to have a war chest of capital to be able to put to work, whether it's right at the beginning or whether it's at some point into our journey, to be able to make that happen. And one of the reasons I'm really excited about our guest today is because one of the things that he's done is he's deployed capital to purchase other law firms, to merge with other law firms as part of his growth strategy. And when you start to recognize that your business is essentially just that, it's a business, you can start to see these kinds of opportunities if it makes sense to you. So I'm super excited about this conversation because we're going to navigate what that looked like for him. So let me tell you a little bit about Ross Albers. Ross is the founder of Albers Associates. And his story, I'm going to let him give you the details of it, but I have the broad strokes here in front of me. And that's 2 weeks before Ross got married. He was fired by a small law firm. He came home and told his wife not to worry about it because he was going to start his own practice. Ross's wife was not thrilled, which I'm going to take a detour here. Makes a lot of sense. Usually, spouses are more risk averse. So usually the person who is the law firm owner or the business owner is the one willing to take a lot of risk. And then the other one wants some sort of security blanket. And there is no security blanket when you own your own business. So 2 weeks later, Ross started the law offices of Ross W. Albers from his dining room table. Today, Albers and Associates has 6 attorneys that practice out of multiple locations throughout Maryland. Their vision is to create a $150 million business with offices across the country employing thousands of people. Albers and Associates is a personal and professional development company that happens to practice law. And one of the things that I love about this intro I was given, well, there's 2 things I love about it. One is that he has a vision. He has a vision to create a $150 million business with offices across the country. So he already knows where he's headed. And that's one of the big things that I harp on the podcast and in my coaching sessions with my clients, is that you have to get clear on your vision before you start. So I can't wait to talk to Ross about that, and how he was able to come up with his vision and what's driving that. And then the other thing is that he describes his company as a personal and professional development company that happens to practice law, kind of like what I do, where I am trying to help people create generational wealth. and I happen to work with lawyers. But the reality is that I will work with anybody. I will expand beyond that. And, you know, Ross is not backed into a corner of saying, hey, we're just a law office. He can, through that lens, he can look at other opportunities that can elevate them to increase or expand what they do for their clients if their clients need something else besides for practicing of law. So really excited about all these different things and what we're going to get to discuss. And I'm going to bring Ross on in just a moment. But before I do, we got to give some kudos to our sponsors. I'm going to just play some of my pre-recorded sponsor reels for you. I'll be right back.
Finding amazing employees is the toughest job for any business, and especially for a law firm. You deserve to be the law firm owner you've always wanted to be, but you can't get there without a great team. Get Staffed Up helps you build your all-star team by staffing your law firm with incredible full-time offshore virtual assistants. Work with Get Staffed Up to save money and your biggest resource, time, while they find you the best English-speaking VAs in the world. Hashtag delegate your way to freedom. To learn more, go to profitwithlaw.com/get staffed up. profitwithlaw.com/get staffed up. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior virtual receptionist service for small businesses. They specialize in working with solo and small law firms. I discovered Smith AI a couple of years ago and was blown away by the range of services, which are available at a cost any attorney, even those of you in the smallest solo practice, can afford. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish, screen and schedule new leads, and even take payment for consults. The best part is, they don't just handle these conversations by phone. They also have live agents and chatbots capturing leads on websites and via text message. If there's one growth hack to your practice, this is it. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines. They'll capture new leads while you work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $210 a month for calls and $140 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like Justy Nickel in Colorado say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth and client happiness. Smith AI offers a free trial, and podcast listeners can get an extra $100 discount with promo code ProfitLaw100. That's ProfitLaw100. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Trust me when I say, don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI.
Well, Ross, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's my absolute pleasure. So if you can do me a favor, the easy thing that I like to do is just say, hey, people have no idea who you are. I kind of gave you a little bit of an intro, but give us the backstory. Tell us, how you came to be, how do you choose law? How do you become a law firm owner? Just a little bit of that backstory so that we can learn a little bit about you before we dive into this conversation.
Sure. My first job or career after graduating from school was working for an insurance company. And it was, if you remember the movie The Matrix, there's a scene where Keanu Reeves wakes up and he's like naked in a pod, and they kind of start to pan out, and there's a guy next to him, someone next to him, and as they go further and further out, there's just hundreds, thousands, millions of these pods. And that's how I sort of describe working at the insurance company, except everyone was in a cubicle, right? And we were in this giant cubicle farm, and I'm, I don't know, 22, 23 years old. And I remember kind of thinking to myself, this is not where I'm supposed to be. I can't be here for the rest of my life. Working in this industry, sitting in this cubicle, there's got to be more for me out there. And at the time, my role there was working with attorneys and hiring them to litigate sort of claims that we had. And I just sort of fell into, okay, well, the next thing for me to do is to go to law school. And went to law school, kind of had a passion for criminal defense because I was living in Baltimore and watching The Wire at the same time. So naturally, I was just like, there it is. I want to be a prosecutor. So eventually became a prosecutor in Baltimore City for a couple of years. And Then, as you mentioned in the intro, left, joined a small law firm, got fired, came home, told my wife I'm starting a firm. And I joke today, I started my law firm from my dining room table. And here I am 6 years later, still sitting at the dining room table, except it's because of a pandemic and the offices are, closed and courts are closed. But really, the sort of the game-changing moment for me, sort of like the service that you provide your clients, is working with a consultant or coach. A friend of mine said, "You've got to meet my business coach," and I did. And I remember him telling me, to this day, I'll always remember this. He said, "Ross, you're just an employee of a law firm that happens to be named after you." And that just resonated with me because he went on to sort of explain, you've got to spend more time working on your business than you do working in your business. And just like probably 99.9% of all law firm owners, they spend the majority, if not all of their time working in their business, being the lawyer, being the paralegal, being the secretary, and very little time doing the three things that I've learned that I must focus on and is my sole responsibility, which is to hire people, acquire new business, and inspire the people that are working for me. And if I do those three things, we'll be successful. And I've learned that along the way, I don't have time to focus on those areas if I'm sitting in the courtroom, being an attorney. And so in many ways, I've had to step back because I like to say I made the mistake of opening and starting my own business. And if I really wanted to focus and practice law and be the best attorney I could be, then I needed to find a place that was going to give me the tools and resources and allow me to do that. But unfortunately, I came home and decided I'm opening a business. So immediately my role in life and in my business changes just like that. And I think the issue and problem that most people have is they never recognize it. They never fully understand that, like, you started a law firm, you started a business. Your responsibility is to be the leader of that company, not to be the 9 to 5, attorney. And that was, something that has taken me many years to sort of learn, develop, understand, step more into that role. I certainly miss practicing in a lot of ways and going to court and seeing my friends and getting, meaty cases that had some issues. But unfortunately, I'm the founder and owner of a business, and I have a responsibility to run that business. And I have a responsibility to the people that work for me to make sure that they're being paid and that the firm is growing and that they have benefits and they have opportunities, and I'm finding them new roles, and I'm doing the things that help them achieve the goals that they want to achieve personally and professionally. And I can assure you, and that that is a full-time job. Hiring people is a full-time gig. Acquiring new clients is a full-time gig. And then holding your people accountable and inspiring them is also a full-time job too. So that's kind of where I'm at today and how my story has sort of evolved.
It's incredible. And I love there's a number of things I like about your story, but and this is not because I'm a coach and not because that's what I do for a living and helping other people work through that, but the fact that you recognize that you don't know everything and you can get in your own way, and you actually need to have somebody who can help you see what you don't see, is huge. And many people don't realize the value of having that person in your corner is. And I think everybody should have a coach. I have a coach, and you don't necessarily stick with the same one throughout. If at some point you sometimes can outgrow your coach. Sure. If you have new problems that they haven't experienced or they haven't worked with, then you got to find a new one. But at every step of the way, when you're in it, you don't see the big picture. It's kind of like when you're sitting in traffic and you can't see ahead to see what's causing the backup. Yeah. And you don't know if it's, am I in this for 10 miles or am I in this for 100 miles? And, how screwed am I? And do I need to get off this exit and take a detour? And you need a helicopter to hover overhead and see what's going on. And you can't be the helicopter in your business. It just doesn't work. So we're too close to it. We're too vested in the decisions we've already made that we fail to see the outside. I even have coaches for other things. Like, one of the things I do on the side is, it's a hobby right now, but I'm honing my skills because it's part of my trajectory of helping people build generational wealth. Is I'm doing options trading, not day trading, but options trading on the side, and I have a coach for that too.
Sure.
And it's crazy because it's, at every step of the way, I know, analytically, intellectually, what I should be doing, but emotions get in the way, and and my attachment to my previous decision gets in the way, and it becomes so obvious when I'm dealing with that, because and some people may understand and some people may not, if you've never invested in the stock market. But if you buy a stock and then it goes down the next day, you're less likely to sell it and move it into another position because you were wrong. You're going to hold on to it, take the ride down, and hope that it's going to come back up. And the only reason you do that is because you're emotionally invested in the decision you've already made.
Sure.
And we do that in business too. We make a decision and we realize it was the wrong one, but we continue to go down that path, even though it was the wrong one. We also sometimes make a decision it was the right one. We didn't give it enough time, and we exit and we go to something else too soon, and we don't give it a chance to grow. There's so many parallels that I can draw in these different experiences. But at the end of the day, having somebody that you can openly share where you're up to and what you're doing, and can help, that they can help guide you on finding you and what you want, and helping you see that over and over again throughout your process, is really what they're there for. And it's an amazing tool to have in your tool chest. So what I'd like to jump to is the growth of your law firm. So you started your firm. And the first thing that, obviously you must have had stages of growth, right? So I imagine, and I could be putting words in your mouth, but I imagine that you had to get yourself or your practice as a seedling brand new business to a certain level of success before you could think about growing it to the next step. So talk to me about what that looked like for you. A lot of people struggle with that first stage of, how do I get myself to some level of success and to profitability and taking money home? And how did you navigate that beginning of your journey?
Well, probably just like most people do, just sort of feel, right? Like, oh, I feel like we're being successful. I feel like I'm making money. It's funny to me, and when you grow, you always sort of set the ceiling of like, well, once I make this much money, I'll hire somebody. And then guess what happens? You make that much money and you don't hire somebody, because you say, well, I really got to make this much more money before I hire somebody. And really, it came down to just learning those concepts that, like, in order for me to earn more, work less, and live a richer life, I needed people, and I had to do that with and through other people. And I think, my first hire, or my coach always says, when people ask, well, when should I hire somebody? And he goes, yesterday. Like, you should have done it yesterday.
If you're asking the question, it's already too late.
Yeah, you should have done it yesterday. Right? Oh, okay. I mean, my first hire was just somebody, like maybe 3 days a week for 2 hours a day, who opened and scanned my mail for me. And I thought that was the most life-changing event that had ever occurred in my business. I'm like, wow. And then it evolved to, okay, I'm going to go out and sort of merge in another firm, and I'm going to give up the practice so that I just focus on hire, acquire, and inspire. And I think that was sort of the next stage of it, is sort of, okay, I'm not going to practice it anymore. I've got to step back. And then the next stage for me really became sort of developing and growing as a leader, because once you start adding people to your team, you've really got to have the skills and the mindset of, how do I hold people accountable? How do I find out what they need? And that, to me, has been the biggest learning process over the last probably 2 to 3 years. Just sort of the accountability portion, finding the right people. So it's easy to go out and hire anybody. I mean, you can do that today if you wanted to. But the skill and the process for my growth was beginning to learn how to find the right people to fit our culture. Who am I really looking for? And so I still, one of the things we did sort of growth wise was an attorney that I had kind of been in touch with throughout the years was deciding to leave their firm, and they practice family law and we didn't practice family law. And I just said to myself, you know what? I think there's a real opportunity here. This is a good fit. This is the right person. I need to get this person on my team. And, here we are about a year and a half later, and that family law department has 4 people in it, and
Right.
so for me, sometimes it's just kind of dipping your toes in the water and just doing it. I like to, my coach, as I'm sure you are, is very big on, taking action, right? Do things, go out
Yep.
there and try. You've got to at least try. Something, fails, like you mentioned with the stock, make changes, adapt. If something's working, double down on it, and so I find, my growth through this whole process has just been trying new things. And I have definitely, just like most people, have been not quick to change when things are failing, and maybe not quick enough to double down when they're really being successful. And so, as you mentioned earlier, having sort of that 30,000, 40,000 foot view, that's where you really get the opportunity to see what's working, what's not. And until you can sort of levitate it and get up there, it's really hard when you're down in the weeds. You just don't see that. So that was sort of the growth thing for me, was going from a part-time to a full-time to merging into practice, stepping away from law, and then really just trying to focus on leadership and accountability.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's so much to unpack in what you just shared. But you're right. I do talk about action creates clarity. That's something that I harp on a ton, because one of the things that we tend to do is we tend to sit in this indecision of, should I do this? Should I not do this? And when we sit in indecision, we don't make a decision, and therefore we don't take action. And all we're doing is we're guaranteeing our lack of success because we haven't taken any action, instead of trying something, finding out it doesn't work, and then trying the next thing and finding the thing that does work. So I'd rather do something and find out it was the wrong thing than not do anything at all, because at least I was trying. And that's the challenge that we just naturally, people we have survival instincts. And for some reason, when we're in our business and we have a decision to make, our survival instincts kick in, and we think that all of these possibilities of what ifs are the end of the world. But the reality is that if we actually play them out and say, okay, so what if that does happen? What
Yeah.
if, and when you actually play them out, you realize that the consequences are so small, they're so insignificant, that had you just even looked at it logically, you would realize that this doesn't make any sense, and you'd be able to move forward. So having somebody to help you with that, or just having a process to work through that yourself so that you don't get stuck in indecision, is massive. But the other thing
I'll
yeah,
interject
go
just to
ahead.
say, probably one of my greatest strengths is I will take action. One of my greatest weaknesses is that I will take action. Right?
Yep.
I mean, not I will jump in there and do it, but sometimes I do it without really playing it out and thinking about it. And so,
Right.
taking action um, is difficult, because you could be like me, where it's a strength but also a weakness, or you can be like someone who just always thinks about it and never does it. And I think that's worse. That's probably worst case scenario than myself, which is, well, I'll just do it without really thinking about it. Well, at least I'm doing it, and you got to get over
Right.
that hurdle.
Yeah, you know what? The truth is, this is another parallel I could draw from what I'm doing in the market right now. Um, all of the trades that I have taken that went the wrong way or didn't work out in my favor in the long run were trades where, when I look back, I violated some of my rules, or I didn't think it through before I
Sure.
went into the trade. It was a emotional action that started it, and not a logical one. And honestly, the easiest way to overcome that when you're an action taker is to have a process that you follow for every decision before you execute. And that's simply going through these checkpoints to make sure that you're not making this decision too rash, too quick. It's different than sitting in indecision, where you're allowing yourself to get in your own way. And that's when we say you have to take action, what it doesn't mean take action willy-nilly. It means that you have to recognize when you're faced with a decision that you have to make a decision and take the next step. But that decision should come with thought. It should come with thinking things through. One of the biggest things I cover I do a program called the 90-Day Law Firm Turnaround, and it's essentially designed to help somebody go from not being able to achieve what they thought they'd be able to achieve to hitting all of it in the next 12 to 18 months. And the magic of the program is simply taking a step back. It's simply figuring out what is it that I do want, resetting the destination so that I actually am headed in the right direction, and then creating a plan on paper of how I'm going to get there, instead of just going through the motions every day, waking up in the morning, looking at the bank account saying, oh my gosh, the bank account's light. I got to check and I got to bill some customers, bring in some cash. Oh, wait, I don't have any pending invoices I could bill. Oh, I got to get new clients. Yeah. That shouldn't be how you arrive at the decision of whether you should be focused on sales today.
Sure.
And that's how we operate. So we have to get out of that, and to get out of that requires planning. It requires, thinking things through in advance. And one of the most powerful things that you can do is to constantly be doing these quarterly planning sessions with yourself. Once you have a team, with your team, to make sure that everybody's pulling in the same direction and that you're crystal clear on what the goal is. Like, what is our objective this month, this quarter, this week, whatever it is, today? When I walk into the office, I should have a plan for the day of what I need to accomplish, and not allow email and other people on my team interruptions to control how my day goes. And I think that's, when we can own that, when we can control that, we've already won the battle, even if there's work to be done.
True. I mean, you have to be intentional with your time, right? Your calendar should be time blocked with your activities that you're going to do. You should never look at a week on your calendar where there's just nothing on there, right? Like, block out your time. I'm going to focus on this at this time. I'm going to work on this at that time. And, going back to your point of having sort of a checklist of decision making, I will say oftentimes people they procrastinate in the checklist level of like, well, I got to have all these things before I do that. And I've learned that my checklist is built and created and modified as I fail at things, right? So as I take action, and maybe a hire I made was not the right hire. Well, now I can add something to my checklist of like the people I'm looking for in my firm, or maybe it's a marketing strategy. But the key though, is that you've just got to go and do something, right? You got to take action. You have to fail. You have to be okay with the fact that like some things are not going to work, some things are, but always just know that like when you have that same decision you have to make, like just improve on it. And you only really do that from having failed at trying, right? And if you're never going to try, then you're never going to fail, which means you're never going to learn what works and what doesn't. And, it's been 6 years for me, and we talk about, oh, you have this success. Well, honestly, I'd say it's been far more failures than it has success, but that's okay, because I've just learned that like, it's almost, you got to tell yourself like, oh man, I hope I really fail this week at this, so I can learn how to improve and get better at it. And oftentimes people, that's what's their self-limiting belief, is that, well, I might fail. Well, good, you should. And I hope you do. And I hope you learn something from it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I actually try to talk people out of using failure in their vocabulary at all, because you should be approaching this with the hat of a scientist. If you understand that as a business owner, all I am is a scientist doing experiments to figure out what works, then a scientist doesn't think he fails when an experiment doesn't work. It just demonstrates. I ruled out that possibility.
That's a great way to look at it.
To success.
I like that.
And
I like that.
Yeah. So I like to take failure out, because there is no failure as long as you learned a lesson from that experience.
Correct. That's a great way to, to flip it back and say, well, you actually learned something. So what did you fail at? You've improved yourself, personally and professionally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with
absolutely. This is, and folks, I hope that you're listening carefully, because this is gold. It's funny because people want the tactics. They want to know, okay, how do I do it? How do I get to success? And the truth is that the tactics are, look at all the gurus out there who are going to show you how to grow your law practice, right? There's so many people out there who have, this is the way that that will get you there. And they're each a different tactic, right? The tactics will all work.
Finding amazing employees is the toughest job for any business, and especially for a law firm. You deserve to be the law firm owner you've always wanted to be, but you can't get there without a great team. Get Staffed Up helps you build your all-star team by staffing your law firm with incredible full-time offshore virtual assistants. Work with Get Staffed Up to save money and your biggest resource, time, while they find you the best English-speaking VAs in the world. Hashtag delegate your way to freedom. To learn more, go to profitwithlaw.com/get staffed up. profitwithlaw.com/get staffed up. Thanks to our sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a superior virtual receptionist service for small businesses. They specialize in working with solo and small law firms. I discovered Smith AI a couple of years ago and was blown away by the range of services, which are available at a cost any attorney, even those of you in the smallest solo practice, can afford. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in English or Spanish, screen and schedule new leads, and even take payment for consults. The best part is, they don't just handle these conversations by phone. They also have live agents and chatbots capturing leads on websites and via text message. If there's one growth hack to your practice, this is it. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front lines. They'll capture new leads while you work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $210 a month for calls and $140 a month for chats. They even offer a totally free chatbot, so there's no excuse. Try Smith AI today and see for yourself why attorneys like Justy Nickel in Colorado say Smith AI receptionists are the secret to business growth and client happiness. Smith AI offers a free trial, and podcast listeners can get an extra $100 discount with promo code ProfitLaw100. That's ProfitLaw100. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Trust me when I say, don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI.
The problem is that it's in the execution, it's in the mindset, it's in the where am I going, and that's where people don't realize that they need to focus. And if you focus on that piece of it, the rest you'll figure it out.
You said it, execution. I like to use the word implementation, right? The difference between those that are successful is implementation, right? Because we can all sit here and hire coaches, which you should. You want the business hack, hire a coach and consultant, right? You need that person who's going to hold you accountable. The other sort of tip or hack or golden nugget is, I would say, read. Be a relentless reader of books about business, leadership, sales, management. Because when you hire a coach and you're working with somebody and you're meeting once a quarter, right? You get together, you meet once a quarter, you leave that meeting, you're carrying the coach on your shoulders, rah, we're going to go out and tackle the world. And then you show up to work on Monday, and what do? You start checking your email right away, right? You get back into the weeds. And for me, I've found to have that mindset is just to always be surrounded by books, podcasts, anything that just reminds me this is what I should be doing. And sure, the tactics might be different from coach to coach, book to book, but the core principles and everything I've read are exactly the same. They never change. It's so funny to me, because I'm probably reading a book or two a week, and it's just the same. They saying the same stuff, just different ways. And the key, though, is those people that are successful is that they implemented, right? They took action. They were told, you should try this, you should do this, and they actually went out and did it. And in the implementation, they improve their process over and over and over again. Those that will not be successful are the ones that will get that knowledge but take no action, right? So I like to say, I had heard from something I listened to, knowledge is not power. Knowledge put into action is power. So take the things that you're learning from books, podcasts, coaches, and actually do them, right? And that's the implementation is what the execution will make you successful.
Absolutely. And you don't want to walk away from reading a book with a bunch of notes that you're never going to look at again.
Correct.
Some people are, they read books and they'll take notes, but then they don't actually put any of it into action. And some people read a book and don't take any notes, but they understand if you look at every book that you read and say, what is the one key takeaway that I can take from this book? Just look for one.
Yeah.
Not 10, not 1,000. One. What is the biggest takeaway you got from reading that entire book, and implement that? Sure. That is going to get you so much further than whatever it is that you're already doing. And I just want to give a quick plug we actually have a book club for lawyers. Yeah. So if you need some accountability, you need somebody to help pick the book for you. We go through not 2 books a week, but we go through 1 book every 2 months, because that's what people have given us feedback on, saying, hey, this is where we need to be. But if you go to profitwithlaw.com/book club, profitwithlaw.com/book club, it'll take you over to our Facebook group. It's currently free. At some point, it will become a paid product, but right now it's a free thing. So join us. And hop in, and it's being run by Mimi on my team, who happens to also be my daughter, and she's doing a fabulous job. They have a monthly call that they do to review the book, and that's great. And they're doing posts in the Facebook group, discussing what they're finding, what they're learning, and sometimes we get to bring the author on for an exclusive call with the Reader's Nook members. So definitely join us there. profitwithlaw.com/book club. So Ross, you went through some stages of your journey, and you basically leapt from being the owner of your firm to acquiring a firm, and then saying, hey, I'm not going to practice myself anymore. I'm going to run this business, and I'm going to let other people do that work. Take me through that process a little bit so that people can wrap their heads around it. First of all, what is entailed in acquiring a law firm? It almost sounds like you skipped some steps in there, and which might have been by design. It might have been your plan of what you were trying to do, but it might also open up confusion for our listeners. So I'm curious to get an inside look as to how you navigated that process. How were you able to pay for it? How did you find the firm? What made you decide to go down that path? Maybe unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, sure. Really just through sort of the help of my coach to kind of understand that, the growth of all businesses in some way have been through the merging of companies, the merging or acquisition of different companies. I mean, it happens every single day. You could go pull up Wall Street Journal, and learn about companies that have combined. And so he had sort of, put out there that this is something you should be actively looking for and working on. It's a long-term process. It takes, 11, 12, 13 meetings before you'll get somebody to say yes. And it might span the course of 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 years before you can get there. And you've also got to be talking to thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, because 99% will say no and reject you. And so if you ask one person and they say no and you give up, well, you still got, 999 people to go. But for me, it was just something to kind of put out there that, hey, if you're really targeting 2 groups, attorneys that are looking for a succession plan, retiring attorneys, right, who want to step away from their practice, say 3 to 5 years from now, or sooner. And so, approaching them and giving them that opportunity to say, hey, let me be your succession plan. Come, bring your firm in here. We'll roll in your clientele, your numbers, your offices, your staff, and you help us, keep it going and merge and integrate. And then we'll let you ride off into the sunset whenever you decide you want to do that. It's also been through attorneys who have health issues, right? Someone gets very ill and now they can't practice anymore. So we've had opportunities to come in and say, great, roll into our firm. We will help you handle these cases. We'll help you refer out the ones that we may not be able to handle or take, and you'll have somebody there. So we've done that. And then a bigger one too has been, identifying, looking for firms or solo practitioners who just love practicing law, but they don't love running the business, right? And maybe helping them, maybe they've come to that own conclusion in their mind, or maybe helping them realize that and say, hey, everything you're doing on your own, why don't you come and do it here? And you'll have all of these extra resources to help you. Because I can assure you, when people went out to start their own business, their own law firm, no one did it with the idea that I want to work 80 hours a week. I want to work on the weekends. I want to pick up my kid from daycare, and then I want to go home and I want to keep working. And but what do I love about owning my own business? Well, I have control over my time. And it's like, well, no, you don't. So kind of helping people face these hard truths, and saying like, hey, you could be a part of this and our vision of what we're trying to do. And what you want to accomplish, let us help you. So for me, that has sort of been the journey, and I guess you could say the targets that we've looked for, and the firms and the people that we've reached out to. We've done a couple in different ways, and it doesn't always, it's a self-limiting belief to think, well, I've got to go pay someone $1 million for their law firm. Well, the truth is that most of our law firms aren't really worth anything, right? Because if you're doing all the work, and you must be present every single minute of the day, it's not worth anything, right? And so
Right.
what we do and can do is say, we can give you the stability of, we will pay you, we will create, production and origination bonuses such that, you can produce work and bring in clients and earn more money. And so, no, it has not always been, nor does it need to be well, we're going to give you $3 million for your practice. I mean, I've yet to speak to somebody, and maybe a few, where like, I think that's a real option. There's just a whole lot of different ways you can try to do it. You have to be creative. And I think you have to get over the self-limiting belief of, well, I could never ask this person to merge with me. They want $2 million for their practice. Well, you don't know that. You just have to go and ask them. The other things I've learned along the way too is to, ask people what they want. What do you want? How does this look to you? And don't go to them and tell them this is how it works and this is the way it's going to be. Because attorneys, we just naturally just want to argue and reject that and not be sort of told. So, I approach it with, if you have somebody that you're targeting or think would be a great merger, ask them, well, what would it take? What would you want to become a part of this firm? Well, I would like to be called a partner. I'd like to earn this. And then the response should be, great, let's figure out, let's get there. And so for me, that's sort of been the journey. We didn't necessarily completely skip right to mergers. I mean, I had hired attorneys, right? I had tried hiring attorneys. I had some successes, some failures. But along the way, I was always in the back of my mind working towards that goal of like, I've got to grow through the merging of firms, because that is just happening all around me, especially here in Maryland where I live. I mean, there's firms here that has been their like entire growth strategy. It's just sort of the merging of practices into theirs.
Yeah, and it's what's really incredible is that people, when they're building their firm, they think, oh, this is my retirement plan, right?
Yeah.
When I'm done, I'm going to sell my firm. And what they don't realize is that unless you have hired staff that is all operating and doing the work, if you're one of the people, you have to assume that when you're selling it, somebody's going to have to hire somebody to sit in your spot.
Correct.
And if your entire profit of the firm is the salary of an attorney, then there's zero value or almost zero value in your firm. Depending on your practice area, your customer list might not be valuable. If you're doing bankruptcies or family law, where these are one-time events that people don't intend to ever repeat, your customer list is worthless.
Sure.
It's one thing if you're in business law, at least then, your customers are going to come back, your customers, clients, whatever you want to call them, they're going to come back for, needs as they grow, and hopefully they'll be growing. So there's some value in the client list. So there's basically the value in the list of clients. Potentially there's value in the people on staff. There's value in a system and systems and processes where you have a well-oiled machine that operates on its own without you. But if you don't take those steps in your growth, you're going to be in for a rude awakening when it comes time to close up shop, and you're going to try to sell that to somebody. You're not going to be able to find the buyer that you want.
Yeah, no one wants to buy someone else's job. right?
Right.
Like that's not
Exactly.
not what I'm interested in. So if the merger or acquisition of our firms requires that I have to go into your office and sit behind your desk and do your job, then I'm not interested. Because that's not my role and what I need to be doing. And so what I'm way more interested in is if someone were to say that, like, well, I own this firm. Maybe I do a little practice in here, but like I've got this support staff. Here's our sales and marketing system. Here's our process. Here's where our cases come from. I have these relationships. Like, okay, now we have something here that is just sort of a plug and play, as opposed to, well, Ross, I'd love to, have you merge my practice. When will you be in the office, doing my job? The answer is never. I won't be
Right.
doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And the other thing that you said that really, really struck me, and, and is to ask them what they want. And
Sure.
I think that we people don't realize that we can have these conversations with other people besides for firms we want to acquire. You should be asking your employees what they want.
Yep.
You should be asking your staff what motivates them. How are you going to put a carrot in front of them to help incentivize them to the next step? And what you'll be shocked to find is not everybody just wants more money. We
Oh yeah.
assume that they want more money. They want a bonus of some kind. They want, some people just want more flexibility. They want more time. They want, they might want Friday afternoons off in the summer, and that'll mean the world to them. And now you can have your target metrics that you're going after, and you can get your team on board, and you can say, hey, if we hit this milestone, we're going to have Friday afternoons off in the summer. And if that's what they want, that's going to drive them. That's going to motivate them. So when you are in any conversation where you're trying to figure out what does somebody else want, you have to ask. You have to have that conversation. Don't assume that you know what they want. Speaking of which, how typically is this structured? I know with the purchase of accounting firms, typically it's paid out over a period of time,
Sure.
and it's off of the future results of the firm that's been acquired. So if you sell it to somebody who runs it into the ground, essentially you'll end up not getting the payout you expected. So is that how it's structured in the legal industry as well? And do you have control in that conversation to bring new ideas of how to structure it to the table?
Yeah, I think each one is structured somewhat differently. I mean, really at its base, you want to know, hey, show me, what have your revenues been for the last, 3, 5 years? What are we sort of averaging here? And then based on that, you can sort of say we're going to pay a base number to you just based on what you sort of have done in the past. And then we're going to set a target that if it goes above that, we'll compensate you this way. We've done those. We've offered those. We've seen those opportunities work. We've done ones where it's just, hey, we're just a straight percentage of what you did last year, and we just kind of change it each year based on that number. But really, I don't think there's any one strict way that it must be done. You just get creative, right? And you figure out at the end of the day, what does the person want? Maybe all they really want is to just go live in Florida, right? And you assume their business, and they stay on as of counsel. They do want to practice. You want their name because they have relationships, and they're, hey, I'm willing to help continue to generate and originate business for the firm. So it's just a number of different ways. There's no concrete way, but it does begin with just sort of asking. And to go back what you said about employees and asking them what they want, I have found that most of the time, it's not money and bonuses. Yeah, those are great. But what's smart, what humble, to take a line from Patrick Lencioni, what humble, hungry, smart people want, the type of people that you want in your business, what they truly desire is the autonomy and ability to be able to do their job and not be micromanaged. They want the responsibility to be trusted that, hey, you hired me to do this. Let me go do my job, and I'm going to come to you with new ideas. And so a main focus for me recently has been honestly trying not to bother my people, leave them alone. You still meet with them. Maybe it's weekly, maybe it's bi-weekly. We're getting ready tomorrow to do our quarterly firm-wide meeting to kind of review how our quarter went, what we want to change, what worked, what didn't, what we're expecting in the next quarter. And we always tie it into some sort of team building event. We've gone bowling, we've done sort of, survival sort of skills, trying rope courses and things like that. And so, yeah, you've got to get with your folks, ask them what they want. You should be you should be meeting with your people individually who are your direct reports every 90 days. And you're asking them two questions: what's working and what's not working? And that feedback is just so valuable because, about every 90 days, people start to get off track, right? They start to lose focus. They start to sort of forget what is their role, what are they here to do? And you have to have those conversations to recenter them and bring them back in and say, okay, what's working, what's not? Remember, these are your key roles in the company, and this is what you need to be focused on. So as much as, my growth has been through, trying to hire and acquire clients, a lot of it is also in the inspiring accountability portion and trying to understand what my people want and helping them achieve it. And the only way you do that is by having conversations with them and asking. And so, yeah, that's, to me, I'm learning that leaving my people alone, not micromanage them, and telling them that I hired you for this reason, go out and do it. That's what they really want. They want that control and ownership of their role and their job without someone having to sort of sit there and manage what they do every minute.
Now, the way I understand it is, you, with these acquisitions and with the way that you grew the firm, it sounds like you have a bunch of small offices that are in operation, right? And you're kind of keeping everybody under this umbrella so that they all work together. So I have a couple of questions around that. One is, are staff in the various offices sharing work amongst each other, or are they each really operating independently?
It depends. Really, for us, we're kind of segmented in departments, right? So you have personal injury, you have family law, you have criminal, and those are kind of their core group of people that they're interacting with on a day-to-day basis. But it's important for us as a firm to come together at the end of every week and say, here was our scorecard, here was the number that you're responsible for reporting to the firm. It could be new clients, can be revenue, can be escrow, can be billable hours. And so for me, that's that opportunity to have everyone be reminded of, hey, we do have this vision and we're all working together towards it. But, family law department and PI don't necessarily communicate constantly throughout the week. So they're sort of more in their departments and in their roles, because most solo practitioners, small firms, they're sort of generalists, right? They kind of do everything. And so, like, your paralegal is doing a PI case and a family law case and a criminal case, and we very much sort of segmented it out to be like, hey, we want a family law attorney who does family law, we want a criminal attorney who does criminal, we want a PI attorney, and then we want the support staff working with them who that's their main focus. It's helpful, and some of our partners and attorneys have experience in other areas, so they can sort of cross over if need be to fill in gaps and things like that. But for the most part, they're working kind of independently in their departments, but we bring everyone together on a weekly basis to sort of share information and numbers, because I want my people to know how we are doing and how much, are we getting close to our vision? And so that, to me, is very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting, because when you look at mergers and acquisitions in business, often the idea of that merger and acquisition is perhaps it's to add another business segment, something like that. But often they're looking at being able to cut some of the overhead, some of the, you both had HR people, but we only need one HR person for both companies, kind of thing, right? So those economies of scale, are you seeing that happen, or is it really, because they're each operating independently, and they're each essentially a small law firm, that you really haven't got to that point where you can, have that kind of situation?
No, definitely. I've seen that, especially on sort of the marketing side with working with internet companies for websites. You really want one, right? You really kind of want to have it all sort of integrated. But I mean, it really for me in the beginning, it's not to go in there and just change everything day one. It's a slow integration. What's working? Maybe they do things, and oftentimes they do better than we do, and we should really be adopting their practices here. Or maybe they have a better HR or internet company than we do, and we should be using theirs. But yes, there is that ability to go in and have the economies of scale. And I often, my coach says all the time, if all of the attorneys that were clients of his just got together and worked together, we'd have the largest law firm in Maryland. We'd be the most successful law firm because we're all working with a coach and we're all trying to do these things. And we could eliminate a lot of costs that we all have because we would be combined and integrated, and we'd be really powerful. But it's hard, it's hard for people to see that vision. They want their name on the sign. They want that idea of like, well, I own it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's folks out there that see the value of like, what, combining forces. Like if we're working together, we'll be far greater, and we'll ultimately get what we want, which is to earn more, work less, and live a richer life. And I think that's included for the partners in the firm all the way down to the support staff. Like how do we show them that, hey, we're going to help you achieve that as well. But definitely we have through mergers been able to eliminate things, adopt other practices, policies and procedures. And so for us, as we do it more and more, I think the economies and scale just really increase for us, and it just helps us out so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last area I want to touch on, and then I think we're going to wrap it up because of time. Otherwise, we can keep going for hours. Intake. Have you hired a salesperson to kind of, do that front side of intake? I hate the word intake, but everyone needs to know what I'm talking about. And if I say sales, half of my listeners will turn their ears off. So, in your intake or sales process, do you have somebody that you put into that position that's kind of taking all the calls in and then selling them on the firm and then driving them into the right office? Or does each office really handle the sales process themselves? And is the attorney still doing that?
Sure. What we did, just with the volume of calls that we were getting, right when the pandemic started and we weren't in the office, I went to virtual receptionists. We had been working with one, and I just went to it right away and said, they're just going to answer all our calls right now. And I've kept it that way. And then I've speaking of taking action and trying new things, we tried, okay, well, what if we let them schedule our consultations for us? Like, what if we let them just sort of set up like an initial phone call with the attorney or support staff who can kind of have that initial feeler to see like, where is this person at in the stage of their case? Are they really wanting someone now, or is like, not so much? And so that to us has been very successful. So for us, the virtual receptionist takes the call. What I like about that is it helps us track all of our leads. So like we have information, data. We know where every call is coming from, what campaign it's from, what keywords they're asking for, what their address is. And so they capture all that information and they'll schedule the consultations for us. And then the attorneys typically will, just throughout the day, based on their availability, see, I have a phone consult with so-and-so. And at that point, it's the attorney's process to, we like to get people into the office if we think they're serious. But oftentimes we're able to just do it right over the phone because they're a buyer now, like they want someone right now. Other times, it's someone who maybe they're not a buyer right now, but like we got to follow up with them every couple of days and just sort of stay connected. So for us, the sales team would be the virtual receptionist taking that step of getting them on someone's calendar, the attorney or paralegal, depending on the type of case, calling that person, having a conversation, and then setting the next step with them. Come into our office, or no, you want to sign up right now? Great. Here's the invoice. Here's the retainer. On the other side of that, as far as intake, I get to kind of play role sort of the acquire arena of chief sales officer for the company, right? Taking meetings with referral partners, chiropractors for personal injury cases, other attorneys that don't do what we do. And a large portion of my time is spent meeting with people, connecting with them, finding out what it is they like to do, if it's playing golf, if it's going fishing, if it's doing that, and trying to build relationships. I oftentimes buy books for people that I think they might find interesting, and then staying connected with them, because as you know, the sales process, it's not sort of that initial call, that initial meeting, that initial intake, it's the follow-up. It's the setting of the next step. It's the being present so that when something comes up, they're reminded about you. And I think the same applies to intakes, but that's how we're working. We've gone to just a straight virtual receptionist, which I think, law firms should really consider. Oftentimes there are companies out there that you can outsource activities that you do on a day-to-day basis that they will do better than you. And why will they do better than you? Because that's the sole core of their company, is to answer the phone. And guess what? They may do it better than your own staff is doing. But there's just different things. And so that's how we've been doing it, probably for the last couple of months here. And I think it's worked out well.
Awesome. Well, there's so much more we can talk about, but we have to end at some point. People need to be able to consume this in a certain amount of time. And today's my recording day, which means that there's somebody right behind you. So Ross, I do appreciate your time. This was incredible. I mean, just getting an inside look into your journey and what you've had to work through. I think for me, the key takeaways are: get yourself a coach, take action, be willing to fail, putting quotes around that word fail, be willing to fail and fail forward, right? Learn from your mistakes and get back up and keep going, and ultimately you're going to get the right formula for you, and listen to what other people want. Listen, if you're acquiring, if you're hiring staff, if you're trying to motivate your staff, even for clients, right? What do they want? Like, what's their goal? What are they trying to solve? What's the outcome that they want? Because when you ask those questions, when you really find out what's motivating them, that can completely change how you look at the way that you deal with them, and really align your interests with their interests instead of it just being all about you. So there was so much that we covered, but those were the key points that I think I heard, if I wanted to summarize it. Now I'm going to ask you, if you can leave one parting piece of wisdom, one parting piece of advice for our listeners, what would that be? And then if you want to share with them how they might be able to connect with you, if you're interested, you can share those details as well.
Sure. The easiest way probably to connect with me is via email, ross@rossalbers.com. The website is just rossalbers.com. LinkedIn, that's a platform I use a ton. It's a great way to connect with me. And if I was going to leave sort of your listeners and viewers with sort of one thing, it would be sort of our business's mantra, and quite frankly, what I've adopted as my own and my family, and something I make my 3-year-old and 2-year-old, and when the 1-year-old can almost talk and understand, repeat every night before they go to bed. And so your listeners and viewers should write this down. Dream big, take action, and be relentless.
Dream big, take action, and be relentless. And with that, folks, we're going to close this out. That was amazing. Get in touch with Ross. The details will be in the show notes below the description of this episode. And if this is your first time listening to the podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you get notified the next time that we release an episode. We're here twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, bringing you amazing guests like Ross on Thursdays. And then you got me, yours truly, just behind the microphone myself on Tuesdays, sharing with you some things that are very useful and some things that probably are not very useful, but I'll let you be the judge of that. So tune in on Tuesday for our next episode. And that's basically it. There's one more thing you can do, actually, and that's share this episode with somebody who you think will gain out of it. You have a network of professionals, a network of friends that you are connected to. Choose one of them and share this episode with them, because Ross shared so much with us, and don't keep it for yourself. share that wealth with somebody else. And that's honestly, that's how we grow. It's word of mouth. That's how you grow, with word of mouth. So, share the episode with somebody. And I think that's a great action that you can take from this to be kind to others and help somebody else take that next step in their growth journey. Folks, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care.
Have you been enjoying the show? We sure hope so. To make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app. Next week, we will be back with more valuable resources and ideas on how to break the mold and take your law firm to the next level.